The way events play out in Halo games are infamous in certain circles for being very, very lucky for humans to have survived the Human-Covenant War at all. If any one event happens out of order, or not at all, most scenarios either lead to the Covenant crushing what's left of the UNSC, lighting the Halo array, or both. But sometimes I still wonder, could there be an alternate timeline where humans still live, but without following the events of the games? More specifically, is there a timeline in which humans figure out that the artifact on Côte d'Azur leads to Alpha Halo and somehow capitalize on that? Well, I wouldn't have made this video if I didn't figure out at least some thoughts on it, so let's just dive right in. My line of logic is that any accelerated investigation of Forerunner artifacts by the UNSC or humans as a whole basically has to come off of Dr. Halsey being freed up to do other things than work on the Spartan project earlier than in the games. So to get an alternate timeline started, we have to change the circumstances around the UNSC's outer colonies and the insurrectionist movement in particular. For those of you whom it's been, 18 years since playing Halo 3, good grief, I'll do a quick recap of the events of the Gold Continuity. Gold Continuity, or Gold Timeline, is the official term for the events of the games and books. It was made up due to the Halo TV show following a different sequence of events, which was called the Silver Timeline, so, I don't know, I guess we can call this video the Bronze Timeline family? Anyway, the short version. In 2525, an alien super alliance called the Covenant finds humanity, the spacefaring arm of which is called the United Nations Space Command, or UNSC, and the ensuing war is so hopelessly overwhelming to the UNSC, the literal best they can do is slow the Covenant down. After 27 years, in 2552, a single UNSC ship, the Pillar of Autumn, finds one of the ancient alien artifacts the Covenant are looking for, Alpha Halo. Alpha Halo turns out to be a giant weapon that is only one of 7 Halos designed to wipe the galaxy clean of sentient life in order to starve out the ancient enemy Halo builders were fighting, the Flood. Master Chief and Cortana meet Alpha Halo's AI Guardian, a little shit called 343 Guilty Spark, destroy Alpha Halo to stop it from firing, hijack a Covenant ship and narrowly manage to thwart a Covenant invasion fleet heading for Earth, get back to Earth themselves, then Earth gets invaded anyway. Master Chief helps defend against this invasion, finds another Halo ring, and manages to not blow it up while following the Covenant leadership back to Earth, where it turns out Earth is the gateway to a different kind of ancient alien station called the Ark, located physically outside of the galaxy. Everyone uses the Earth portal to travel to the Ark, humans, Covenant, and even the Flood, where it turns out the Flood can be defeated in this outbreak by firing the secret 8th Halo ring the Ark was constructing now that they're outside the galaxy. Phew, that was a lot. The chain of events that allows the Halo games to proceed in the way that they do all hinges on something called the Carver findings. In 2491, Dr. Elias Carver predicted that the political situation of the outer colonies was unstable, and unless something was done, it would devolve into a total collapse of Earth's control over the colonies and lead to civil war. Carver's suggestion for stability was drastic military action to put insurrections down by force, which is what eventually led to the Orion Project, one arm of which was what recruited Catherine Halsey into creating the Spartan II program and thus the Master Chief. In order to make this alternate timeline, we have to change up the situation around the Carver findings or the actions the UNSC takes in response to them somehow. The two main options are to either make Carver's predictions generally correct but massively overblown, or my preferred option, which is to increase the funding of the Spartan II program, leading to more of them going into active duty. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to proceed with the idea that both happen because it's not important which one does, only that the insurrectionists are defeated long before the events of the games. The events in this alternate timeline might go down like this. Spartan 1s are developed and deployed to even more success than the Gold Continuity. Operation Charlemagne, the only tactical deployment of Spartan 1s, was such a victory for the UNSC that its soldiers were not even sighted by civilians, but in this alternate timeline, it goes even further. Colonel Watts and his secessionists are defeated outright and either killed or captured, not even successfully retreating to the Eridanus asteroid belt. The Spartan II program is still developed for the same reasons as the Gold Continuity, cost and end result effectiveness of the soldiers. However, with the proven effectiveness of the Spartan 1s, and a sense that the insurrectionists are closer to being decisively defeated, Halsey is given better funding in this alternate timeline. Of the original 150 candidates she identifies with the proper genetic profile, she can have all of them kidnapped, and better funding for the augmentation procedures mean there are fewer washouts. 100 Spartan 2s enter active duty service, firmly wiping out the human splinter groups threatening to break away from the United Earth government. Dr. Halsey starts studying the Forerunner artifacts on Reach, but with the extra time given by this increased number of Spartans and decreased amount of resistance they have to fight, she either finishes what's available to study on Reach, or something she finds points her towards Sigma Octantis 4, and the artifact Blue Team recovers much later in the Gold continuity. This is the real point of divergence in this scenario. Humanity discovering their artifact in Côte d'Azur contains the coordinates to a Halo ring long before the Covenant can find it. A survey mission is planned, launched, and discovers Installation 04 sometime before the Gold continuity. However, in order to know what happens in this alternate timeline, we do have to answer a very tricky question that throws a wrench into everything going forward. Why the hell didn't 343 Guilty Spark do anything about the humans on his Halo before they released the Flood? In post-Bungie supplemental media about 343 Guilty Spark, we learned that he has quite a grudge against humanity and was around before the first time the Halo array was fired. However, the terminals added into Halo 1 Anniversary also show us that he does know when ships crash land on the ring, and there are protocols in place for just such a thing happening. This puts us in a really weird spot for how to approach humanity discovering Installation 04 before a flood outbreak happens, because Guilty Spark's behavior is a pile of contradictions. Guilty Spark immediately knows, basically just by looking at him, that Master Chief is a Reclaimer. Yet, in the exact same game, he doesn't even look into the Pillar of Autumn's crash site until Chief and Cortana leave him there. That, combined with him seemingly not even bothering to defend the Flood storage facility with Sentinels, puts forward some really strong evidence that Guilty Spark just doesn't know what's happening on his ring at any given moment. Or it could be evidence of a different interpretation of his character, but that's a topic for another video. Whether or not we deal with Guilty Spark, we do have to answer another question to know how this early discovery of Installation 04 goes. Are we using the Bungie definition of humans or Forerunners, or the 343 Industries definition? In the Bungie definition, if Guilty Spark is actually good at his job, he should just sort of hand over Forerunner technology to humans that came across his Halo. We actually see this behavior of unconditional assistance from a Monitor no less in Exuberant Witness doing everything in her power to assist Fireteam Osiris without needing to be told or convinced. At the very, very least, Guilty Spark should not be inclined to stop humans from reverse engineering the tech present on the ring, so long as it didn't interfere with his mission of containing the Flood. This question also informs how Forerunner technology reacts to humans interfacing with it. In the Bungie-era games, Forerunner technology goes out of its way to do the bidding of humans a lot of the time, but in the 343i games, we barely even see the gifts that Forerunners left behind for humanity at all, because most of it has been replaced by Prometheans. For the purposes of this alternate timeline, we're going to have to make a couple assumptions. Number 1, Guilty Spark isn't actually bad at his job under normal conditions, i.e. if there's not a flood outbreak happening. Number 2, we're ignoring the way 343 Industries treats the relationship between humans and Forerunners. This technically makes for a more boring state of the galaxy from which to make our alternate timeline out of, but more crucially, it means we're ignoring canon information from both Bungie-era and 343i-era games, so go ahead and post in the comments how this still makes me biased one way or the other. With these assumptions in place, we can build a general idea of how an early discovery of Installation 04 by the UNSC would go. Even if Guilty Spark doesn't immediately contact them, human exploratory groups land on the surface of the ring and start gaining access to various facilities. They might even find some kind of message for them left by the Forerunners, assuming the rings actually contain more than just Flood storage rooms and machinery to fire its main weapon. There was literally never any time to search for this sort of thing in Halo 1 or 2, but if the terminals scattered around the Ark are any indication, there would have been some kind of communication intended for the Reclaimers built into the Halo installations. If we're assuming Guilty Spark isn't actually bad at his job, and ignoring the fact that he's making a very blatant Marathon reference when he talks to the Master Chief, like Chief should know all of this shit about Halo already, he would probably make some sort of attempt to explain what the hell is going on like he did with the Heretic Leader in Halo 2. And now we have to answer our next question. What's the earliest possible time that Halsey could discover the location of Alpha Halo? Even if the UNSC has access to Installation 04 before the Covenant, the only real tactical advantage this gives them is the ability to kill everyone in the galaxy, including themselves. Reverse engineering Forerunner weaponry and shields, and retrofitting enough human ships with the technology to win against the Covenant might take decades. Look, we're ignoring the UNSC Infinity, it doesn't matter and doesn't make sense even in context. And even with the treasure trove of knowledge that is a Halo with unfettered access, the UNSC is hopelessly outnumbered in this war. There are a few ways I can see this alternate timeline play out, one group that's more in line with the games, and a separate option that's much more out of left field. For this video, we'll explore the more grounded in the games group. In the Gold continuity, the Human Covenant War breaks out in 2525 on Harvest, during which time the UNSC is still fighting insurrection pockets with the Spartan IIs, and the discovery of Alpha Halo is in 2552, which we definitively know is also when the Covenant learned its location by following the Pillar of Autumn from Reach. We also know Halsey is still researching the Forerunner facility under Castle Base by this point, which gives our main constraints to work with figuring out how this timeline would proceed. Let's go in order of the time the UNSC would have to study Alpha Halo, from least to most. If Halsey only makes it to Côte d'Azur and points the UNSC in the direction of Halo with a minimum amount of time, things get weird. There's no way Oni would allow the location of a confirmed Halo to leak, which means Cortana might not ever know the coordinates to make her quote-unquote random jump away from Reach, which causes the start of Halo 1. As it turns out, that one change basically ruins the entire timeline. Yeah, seriously, if humans discover Halo too soon before the fall of Reach, and Oni makes the site impossible for Cortana to know about, they just lose the war entirely. If the Pillar of Autumn doesn't head straight to Halo from Reach, not only does that mean we never get the Gold continuity version of the Arbiter, it makes Operation First Strike next to impossible without the captured Ascendant Justice, and the Covenant just overwhelm Earth with the fleet gathered around the unyielding Hierophant, without leading Master Chief to Delta Halo. That's really what makes this alternate timeline interesting, because there's already wheels in motion dictating what can and can't happen if events occur out of order or not at all. This means that for our second scenario, in which the UNSC has time to study Halo and maybe learn something from it before Reach falls, we know exactly what that has to change in order to not come to the same conclusion of the UNSC flat out losing the war. Problem 1, Truth and Regret learn the location of Earth independently. The Prophet of Truth learns the location of Earth and that it's the human homeworld at the same time, somewhere around the fall of Reach. Regret learns the location of Earth from an artifact recovered after glassing the human colony Meridian, which leaves out the detail of it being the human homeworld. So in order for discovering Alpha Halo early to have any measurable impact on the timeline, the benefits it has to provide has to account for Regret's invasion of Earth as seen in the opening of Halo 2, and Truth's invasion fleet as seen in First Strike, completely separately. Problem 2. Elites after the Schism still hate humans without the Arbiter. If Alpha Halo is never destroyed and Thel 'Vadamee is never made into the Arbiter as punishment, then even if the Master Chief still kills Regret on Delta Halo, it's unlikely that the Elites break off from the Covenant before humans are defeated. Even if the Schism still does happen, it was the Arbiter vouching for humanity and Ratas 'Vadamee fighting alongside Johnson and Miranda that allowed the truce between the two species to take place at all. So with humans discovering Alpha Halo early, the Schism happening really just turns the war into a 3-faction conflict instead of 2, unless there are more changes. With these problems in place, the scale of the difficulty for humanity winning the war by any conventional metric becomes pretty clear, in that they have basically no chance at all if the events of the games don't happen. Discovering Alpha Halo early has to give an advantage so drastic to the UNSC that it would kinda have to be on par with enabling God mode. To tackle problem 1, we need to figure out what it would take to prevent at least Truth from learning the location of Earth. Regret learned it by attacking the Earth colony Meridian, described as being on the very edge of human space, arriving in 2548 and ultimately glassing the planet after 3 years, with Regret recovering the Forerunner artifact in 2551, and finally deciphering it about a year later to start the invasion scene in Halo 2. However, Regret's invasion doesn't actually have to be prevented, as the Gold continuity shows, because with his information, he just fucks right off to Delta Halo after calling for reinforcements. In fact, Regret's invasion of Earth is required for the UNSC to learn about the existence of the Ark before Truth starts excavating the slipspace portal on Earth. The method by which Truth learns Earth's location is not actually explained, and the circumstances are left vague by the 1020 video, but it's a lot simpler to describe what needs to happen to prevent it. Reach can't fall. Or at least, if it does, the Covenant needs to be denied the ability to hunt around looking for navigation data leading to Earth. Due to Halo Reach supplanting how long it took for the planet to be attacked and finish falling from the book continuity, we know this was a long and protracted process, with Truth possibly being able to find the data at any point during it. So, what even are our options here? Going back to our question of how early Halsey can lead the UNSC towards Alpha Halo, let's say she's able to do that with several years of lead time and humanity recovers how to build slipspace drives equivalent to or even better than the Covenant from the Forerunner tech on Halo, but not with enough time to equip any significant number of ships with it. In this scenario, Operation Red Flag would probably be attempted much earlier than 2552. For it to make enough difference in this alternate timeline, we know it has to be enacted by 2548 in order to do anything about Regret recovering the Forerunner artifact on Meridian. Problem is, even with better slipspace drives, humanity has no shot at Red Flag succeeding as initially planned. Spartan 2s are repeatedly described as having no influence on space battles, which are an absolute requirement for them to get on High Charity or one of the Prophet's flagships to kidnap one of them. But I can think of exactly one way this might play out in the UNSC's favor, by causing the Covenant Schism to happen earlier. We know from Halo 2 that there have been many times the Arbiter has been called upon to prevent the Covenant from splitting. In this scenario, with humans having found a Halo before the Covenant, they might be able to offer the elites something very hard to refuse, a chance to get revenge on the Prophets. The beginning of the Covenant, very creatively called the Beginning War, was an almost total humiliation of the elites due to the Prophets having access to a Forerunner keyship. On paper, the Covenant was started with the elites and Prophets treating each other as equals, but by the time we see it in Halo 2, that idea had passed a long time before the events of the games. The Arbiter used to be the elite's strongest, most honorable warrior leading their entire species to glory, yet for centuries, possibly even millennia before the UNSC, it had been changed into being a pet errand runner of the Prophets. Ratas Vadami outright tells Thel 'Vadami after he becomes the Arbiter in Halo 2 that Thel's life does not matter to him. While Master Chief killing Regret on Delta Halo definitely accelerated the timeline of the Schism, I think Truth probably planned to betray the elites and bar them from the Great Journey the entire time. And given how quickly the Schism happens during Halo 2, it's pretty clear some of the elites knew or suspected it as well. So how does this happen early? Obviously, the UNSC can't roll up to St. Helios, knock on the door, and offer to team up against the Prophets. The first peaceful contact between humans and elites probably happens due to a chance encounter with a separatist faction like the one the Arbiter puts down at the beginning of Halo 2. The irony. These factions likely aren't skeptical of the Great Journey for the same reasons as in Halo 2, but for this scenario, the humans' upgraded slipspace drives would allow them to physically show the separatists Alpha Halo and make them learn the truth about what it was built for and is capable of. Over a period of years, the UNSC manages to get Sangheili sleeper agents and spies to infiltrate Covenant leadership. Hell, let's say they manage to get Ratas Vadami to join their insurrection. The problem is, this can't happen quickly. Truth readily makes examples of anyone who opposes or fails him, and even some that don't do either. However, this does give us our inciting action for the Schism happening early. As soon as Truth finds out that there's any credible rebellion amongst the elites on High Charity, he'd probably just order the Brutes to take over immediately and move High Charity's fleet to Glass Sang Helios. This leads to a much larger and longer civil war than depicted in the games. Just like in Halo 3, humans likely have little if any naval influence on the actual outcome of the battle, but the Spartan 2s do get involved, with Master Chief kicking ass alongside Thel 'Vadamee for narrative symmetry. If the results on the battle at the Ark are anything to go by, with Brute shipmasters just kind of sucking at their job, and Vadum able to engineer a decisive victory despite being outnumbered 3-1, this isn't a fight that even High Charity's fleet can win with just Brute ships against the defenses of the elite's home planet. Truth, Mercy, and Regret are killed by Chief and Vadamee, the amount of Brutes in space is cut to a fraction of what it used to be, and a peace treaty between Sang Helios and Earth is the start of a new great journey to find all the Halo rings acting as actually equal partners. Oh right, we haven't even properly visited a Halo ring yet, and the franchise literally named after them. In this second scenario, the UNSC has more time to recover technology from Alpha Halo and equips a large enough percentage of their ships with it that the Covenant take notice, and start to panic. The entire Holy War the Covenant are waging against humanity is based on the lie that humans are heretics and standing in the way of the Great Journey. If it comes to light that humans not only have access to Forerunner technology, and especially if that technology seems to be functioning better for and kind of obeying humans, the Prophets have a huge problem on their hands. In this scenario, Oni would do anything and everything to make sure Alpha Halo's location can't be recovered by the Covenant from Côte d'Azur. However, this doesn't do anything to make up for the fact that the Covenant have a gigantic head start in investigating Forerunner planets and installations, and the idea that Côte d'Azur was the only location pointing towards Alpha Halo is at best highly unlikely. So in this timeline where humans are clearly gaining some use of Forerunner technology, I think the Covenant would drastically intensify their investigation of known Forerunner worlds and find their own way to Alpha Halo, which already has a large UNSC presence around it. The way this timeline develops depends heavily on how big of a fleet the Covenant sends to Alpha Halo and exactly when it is sent. Too large of a force sent too early, and the UNSC presence would be wiped out pretty quickly, the Spartan 2s would be sent in, the Halo probably ends up destroyed in a similar manner to the games, and neither Regret nor Truth's invasion of Earth are prevented. However, if the UNSC manages to defend Alpha Halo against an equivalent or weaker force, we start getting into more interesting events. This would logically be a location that has a relatively high number of retrofitted and upgraded UNSC ships, meaning it would be one of the most heavily defended locations that humanity holds. So for once, it's a situation where the Covenant can't actually just roll up with a small fleet and steamroll everything. That being said, an object the size of a Halo is simply too large for the UNSC to keep the Covenant from landing on, which means eventually there will be ground engagements for the Spartan 2s to be sent into. Spartan 2s fighting the Covenant on Alpha Halo presents a couple different options for how the events unfold. In one option, Alpha Halo is destroyed while the UNSC retreats before High Charity can arrive in the system, duplicating the events of Halo 1 and possibly distracting the Covenant from invading Reach long enough for Regret's invasion of Earth to happen before Truth's, thus rejoining the Gold continuity just with an unfallen Reach, more surviving Spartan 2s, and Noble 6 running around kicking the same amount of ass as Master Chief, somehow. A different, though very unlikely direction you could go in with this alternate timeline is defecting elites. Upon arriving at Alpha Halo with humans already on the ring, reclaiming Forerunner technology and demonstrating their status as the Forerunner's children, there's a slim chance that some high-ranking elite in the attacking fleet decides, fuck the Prophets, we're cool now, and fully defects away from the Covenant with some amount of ships. I'm not sure where that story even goes from here right now, but the scenario leaves open the possibility of Operation First Strike happening against the unyielding Hierophant by the defecting elites intercepting orders like Cortana did and linking them to the UNSC. It also gets around the Arbiter not existing by having already friendly elites. Let's go back to exactly when this fleet is sent to Alpha Halo. If it's too long before Regret deciphers the artifact on Meridian, then eventually High Charity shows up, and the UNSC has no option but to destroy the Halo and retreat, which again links back up into the Gold continuity with minor differences. However, since we're saying in this scenario that the Covenant amped up their investigation of Forerunner planets, it's possible that Regret also finds and deciphers the Meridian artifact early. If Regret deciphers the artifact close to the time when this early battle at Alpha Halo takes place, we have the possibility of a far different exploration of the Halo rings. We know that in the Gold continuity, Regret hides the Meridian artifact, and none of the other prophets know that he has the location of the Ark portal until he actually invades Earth. But for this alternate timeline, let's say the circumstances are different and Regret isn't quite ready to backstab the other hierarchs due to this happening earlier. In this scenario, Covenant leadership learned the location of every ring, the Ark portal, and the Ark itself. However, because this is from the Meridian artifact well before the battle at Reach, nobody, including Truth, has any idea the Ark portal is actually the human homeworld. Worse, because the Covenant found humans already around Alpha Halo, they have no idea if that's the only ring that humans have access to, or if they're already stationed around any number of them. In short, the scenario puts the Prophets in a tricky situation of having to keep too much information secret, and potentially makes the entire organization into a powder keg. The Prophets have to somehow hide the humans already being around Halo and being the Reclaimers, along with the fact that they already know where all the Halo rings are, out of the public eye. They've been technically doing this already since the start of the war in 2025, but it's more than a little different in this case. The Prophets can't rush High Charity into the Alpha Halo engagement because that multiplies the problem of Covenant rank-and-file members seeing for themselves that humanity are the Reclaimers. They also can't really send scouting fleets to every Halo location to check for humans because that reveals their hand that they already knew all of them and hid that from the rest of the Covenant. They kinda have to keep the location of Alpha Halo secret as well until they can radicalize High Charity's population to such a degree that seeing humans there isn't questioned by anyone. But if the Prophets wait too long preparing the population to see humanity as heretics desecrating the Holy Ring, eventually someone's going to figure out that the hierarchs knew the location of one or more Halo rings and not only didn't go there immediately, but actively hid this from everyone else. There's also the problem of the Prophets needing alive humans to either retrieve the index of a Halo or use it to activate the array. Truth obviously learns this at some point, otherwise he wouldn't need to say, that secret dies with all the rest. But for the purposes of this alternate timeline, it doesn't make a huge difference because I'm going with the most interesting option available. The powder keg ignites, and the Covenant as a whole splinters into a bunch of smaller factions. This option isn't really as unlikely as it may seem at first due to the unpredictability of Guilty Spark. Covenant forces landing on Alpha Halo could evade UNSC troops, find their treasured Oracle of the Forerunners, and be informed of the reality of what Halo is and that humans are Reclaimers without ever talking to the UNSC. We even know for sure this would convince at least some of them because that's exactly what happened as we see in the Arbiter's opening levels of Halo 2. All it would really take is one shipmaster, one Thelvotomy, to learn the truth from Guilty Spark, return to High Charity while still seeming to be a loyal servant, and turn the entire alien alliance into a galactic clusterfuck. Again, the brutes are called upon to slaughter the elites, and the Covenant is broken in a way not even an Arbiter could fix. To keep things interesting, I'm going to say Votomy manages to retrieve the locations of the other Halos and the Ark portal, setting the stage for a dramatic race against the clock. There are a bunch of ways the situation could go, but I'm going to talk about the one I find most appealing. With the locations of the Halo array and Ark portal, but crucially also without the knowledge the Ark portal is on the human homeworld, Votomy takes the fleet of Particular Justice to the Ark portal to prevent Truth from doing the same. The UNSC thinks this is an invasion force and may start up hostilities, but Votomy would get the ceasefire message out somehow and begin negotiations with Lord Hood. Humans and elites manage to hash out the same truce as the Gold continuity just in time for Regret to make his invasion attempt, which is soundly defeated without even being able to escape to Delta Halo. This signals to Truth that the Arc Portal is probably not an option for being able to fire the Halo array unless he commits 100% of his remaining Covenant loyalists to the effort. Instead, what happens is a multi-year-long cat-and-mouse game where Truth's loyalist forces and smaller Covenant splinter groups try to get to one of the Halo rings and activate it, only to be thwarted by Elite and UNSC forces every time. For the sake of drama, we'll say that Delta Halo is both the only ring that has a flood outbreak bad enough to develop a Gravemind, and that it's the last one in contention. This leads us to the last problem with having an alternate timeline that we'll explore in this video, because throwing the flood into any of these scenarios pretty much destroys any semblance of plausibility. The outbreak of the flood on Delta Halo is so severe that it pretty much demands at the very least Delta Halo is fired to contain it, and the games only get around this by leaving enough resources around for the Gravemind to be able to follow everyone through the Arc Portal and put itself in the vulnerable position of being in range of Installation 08, but not any of the 7 other rings. It is 7 at this point because in this scenario Alpha Halo hasn't been destroyed. So how does the battle at Delta Halo go down in this alternate timeline? Well, unfortunately, there's only really 2 options, one that retreads the events of Halo 3, and one that is narratively a little boring. Since we all know how Halo 3 went, we have to choose the somewhat boring option of Delta Halo being Truth's last stand and decisive defeat without giving the Gravemind a chance to escape. This isn't to say it would be a boring battle. In fact, if I had more time, I could probably come up with a pretty exciting timeline of events, but it's boring because the scenario just has to end here without any clever justification or real surprise factor. Truth is defeated, and the surface of Delta Halo is glassed over a period of several weeks before being totally blown up by either a human Nova bomb or a sacrificial ship detonated the same way as in Halo 1. The galaxy is finally safe for humans and elites, both of which spend the following years cleaning up Covenant splinter groups. I'm going to be honest, the scenario where humans find Alpha Halo really early, before even the outbreak of the Human Covenant War, is outside the scope of this video. It goes beyond the idea of finding plausible scenarios into total speculation of how and why events even happen in the first place. The problems of Truth and Regret's totally separate invasions and the Arbiter's non-existence don't even apply here because they both rely on humans being on the back foot for almost the entirety of the war. So instead, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. Why didn't I factor the flood more heavily into these scenarios? Simple. The flood ruined literally everything. Since we know the flood outbreak on Delta Halo happened a long time before the events of the games, every alternate scenario I come up with here has to deal with it in one way or another, and as it turns out, the best way to deal with the flood in most cases is to just fire the damn Halo array. The Forerunners didn't come up with the name on a whim. You can't outsmart the Flood, or negotiate with it, or put up a big enough wall to keep them out of your territory. The only thing you can do is cut off the thing that sustains them. It's not even explained very well in the games how the Flood-infected ships that escaped from Delta Halo were ever properly contained, given they managed to take over and pilot High Charity to Earth and then the Ark. So even if I were to factor the flood into these alternate timelines, the fact of the matter is, doing so means the Halo array fires and kills everyone. I know Oni probably couldn't resist letting the flood out of Alpha Halo, but if I let that into the scenario, everything ends before we even get to the interesting parts. Maybe I'll explore that more in another video, but that's the reason I'm going to cap things off here. Oh, and I'm also ignoring the Forerunner crystal that's discovered under Castle Base on Reach because it's never fully explained, only in one book, and trying to factor any of its abilities into a serious alternate timeline just leads to more questions than answers. Did I miss anything? Did you like the way I explained things? Does this make you have questions? Say whatever you want in the comments, I can't stop you.